Any other? There we go. Now I won't forget. Wonderful. So I see we are 9:04. I'm going to share my screen and we'll just kind of get started because we've got some introductions. And we will go from there. Make sure sound on. Okay. Everyone see? Cool. Perfect. Well, so today, welcome to Together We Thrive, the journey to employee ownership. This is really into it. Is my hope is that we leave today really understanding the strategic advantages of employee ownership and specifically worker co-ops as well. That's my specialty, and I'll talk a little bit to that. So we're going to do an overview of employee ownership options, but just know there's kind of an implicit bias around worker co-ops here, and I want to share that openly. And I want to be able to share what CCWB does and how we can help on your journey. So with that said, I think we're a small enough group that if you are moved to, I'd love for you to come off mute and just introduce yourself. If you're more like, it's 9 a.m., I'm working on my coffee, the chat is good as well. There you go, yeah. So, right, name, pronoun, what brought you here, and if you have an idea of like what you're hoping to learn.
I could jump in. My name is Greg. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I live in Longmont, Colorado. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice, and am connected with many other psychotherapists who are interested in developing a cooperative model for our business. And one thing I'd like to learn where to begin. I have no clue. Yeah.
All right, we got you covered on that one today. And what an awesome idea, I mean, awesome what you do. And if in a cooperative form, I think that would go really well. So welcome.
My name is Sarah Munguis, she, her. I'm Director of Growth and Expansion for Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, so I kind of help oversee new partnerships and programs. And Deborah reached out to me about this workshop, and I just thought this was a really exciting opportunity to learn more about this topic. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I want to learn a lot. I have a lot of things I hope to learn, but I'm coming in kind of from a fresh, clean slate. So I'm excited to kind of hear what this is all about.
Awesome. Welcome. Yes, hopefully you'll leave with more clarity and more questions. That's always what I hope. So everybody who has more questions, there'll be a pathway for us to keep talking too. Anyone else feeling bold?
Yeah, I can go next. I'm going to stay off camera though, because I'm very scruffy this morning. My name is Bethany. I'm curious if I'm maybe the only one from not from Colorado. I am based in Minnesota, and I work for a small communications consulting agency. And I'm the director of operations and finance. I have a lot of personal curiosity around other forms of organization for the company and kind of like what's possible in the future. So it's, I would not say this is necessarily like, my bosses weren't like, hey, go take this find out what you can find out. This is more me like, what are the benefits? How could I pitch something like this to my bosses, but then also just kind of grow my own personal experience with what is possible in this area. And what else? Pronouns she, her.
Awesome. Welcome. Well, we'll treat you like you're a Coloradan today, and the employee ownership kind of support ecosystem is really welcoming. So we can always follow up on who might be the right contact for you locally.
So let me jump in here. My name is David Alley, he, him, his. And I'm here to say this is doable. I'm retired from Designs for Learning, which Bethany is based in St. Paul, Minnesota. I moved to Denver 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We had a long-time succession plan. I was the CEO and became board chair until just last December. But I sold the company back to employees. And that was a long-term process, and it took 8 years to finance that, which I did myself rather than going to a bank. So I'm just learning what things are like here in Colorado, and if there's a way that I can be helpful, happy to do that. But just want to say, on a small scale basis, this is doable. And my company's name was Designs for Learning. So if Bethany, you want to talk to some of those folks, I think they'd be happy to tell you what the process has been there.
That's great.
Oh,
Thanks for sharing.
yeah, I love. So David also, and we're a small group, so we'll chime in as we're going and offer wisdom. But yeah, I have so many ways that I could imagine you getting involved, and I love bringing it in that, yes, this is possible and this is happening. So, Deborah, Hal, do you want to do a quick introduction?
You want to go?
I'll go ahead. Well,
Go. Go, Hal.
Hi, I'm Hal. I'm a community organizer at the Center for Community Wealth Building with the co-op team, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Deborah. My pronouns are she, her. And I've had the great pleasure of working with Michaela and now Hal on helping spread the good word about the program and the resources and support that CCWB provides to support business owners that are open to exploring if employee ownership could be right for them. So I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, we've got a really good support team right now at CCWB, so we're excited to tell you more about employee ownership transitions broadly, as well as what we're doing. And my name is Michaela Holmes. I'm the Cooperative Development Co-Director at the Center for Community Wealth Building. And I've been doing co-op development for the last 10 years. I did it on the national level at the Democracy at Work Institute, and then on the East Coast in Philadelphia. And I am just like so lucky to get to do it now. I'm going into my second year here at CCWB, and I have never worked in an environment where local government is so supportive. And so I think we're a young but growing, rapidly growing ecosystem around employee ownership. And with that, we're just gonna get into it. So today, like I said, we're gonna, like, why right now? This is not a sales pitch. I mean, it's a sales pitch, but it's not a sales pitch. There's really some time sensitive and time bound incentives right now. We're gonna talk about what cooperatives are and what employee ownership is. It's kind of a spectrum, and what those benefits will look like. How to follow the conversion process and from decision making to implementation. And then the next steps, where we'll go, both in your journey and then also what your next steps with CCWB could look like. Does that sound good to everyone? Cool. All right. So just to kind of get us grounded in the way that I approach this and kind of think about this in this moment is there's a great divide. We hear it a lot, it started 10 years ago, certainly with Occupy Wall Street and now we've got this 99 and 1%, framework that we can use. And that wealth gap in the United States is just growing wider. Business ownership is among the most concentrated forms of wealth in the US. And we know that when we have these big gaps, we see things like reduced social mobility, political inequality, economic instability, social tensions, and health disparities. So, you know, I just want to ground us in this moment that we're in right now and how I think employee ownership can support us. Oh, and educational inequalities. So what if more businesses were employee owned? If 10% of businesses in the United States were employee owned, it would be 2 times the wealth share of the bottom 50% and 2 times the median wealth of minority households. And then at 30%, we're looking at 4 times that. Like, whoa, it's amazing. And what I love, and I put this quote from Ronald Reagan, is like, even in the 80s, people were really talking about this and seeing this as a potential path forward, especially in the United States. But we know globally, there's a pretty robust employee ownership movement as well. And as a snapshot, we've got some small business owners here. We have people working at smaller businesses and people supporting them. But, you know, we're built on small business. 99.9% of all businesses in the United States qualify as small. Closer to 50% of the US workforce is employed by a small business. And this, I just think, is like, it's a funny statistic, but it's like small business produce 16 times more patents per employee compared to large firms. I think that really speaks to the innovation of small business and how much small business is a powerhouse. And if I didn't say this already, please do interrupt me if you have questions. I'm really happy to go that way. What constitutes small business? On the traditional, we see 500 or less employees, so it's still pretty big. And then there's also micro businesses that I think micro businesses are usually more what we think of as small business, which I don't know the exact, Deborah, maybe you might, but I want to say it's like 10 and under. Maybe it's more.
Sorry, the definition for the SBDC?
No, I just thought you might know for micro business too.
Oh,
but
it's fluid. I think Jessica says 10.
Yeah, I think so. That's the executive director from CCWB. So some of the challenges, and you guys know this better, than anyone, is common challenges for small business owners: financial, operation, resources, and competition, and retirement. And what I want to say is, in this area, we're really looking at employee ownership as a strategy around exit planning. That's not to say, and I think, Greg, this where you come in is like, I also believe that employee ownership is a strategy for growth. And nationally speaking, we've been seeing people use employee ownership as that exit planning strategy. I will say, on the grounds in Colorado, I am talking to a lot of like 30, 40-year-olds who, like, if I knew this was an option when I registered my business, I would have done that because I'm already operating like that. So it can be used as a growth strategy and something that aligns your business more with your values. So, focusing on preserving your legacy, I'm going to kind of click through these so we can see them all together. 2/3 of owners plan to retire in the next 10 years. 2/3 of owners are unfamiliar with their exit options. In Colorado specifically, Owedit did, in partnership, I think, with the Exit Institute, a report that said, and over 70% of business owners reported that they have no plans for the future. 1 in 5 owners has a written exit plan, right? That speaks to the inverse of what I just said, small. 30% of family-owned US businesses survive into the next generation. That, I was shocked by that statistic. It's smaller than I thought. And to me speaks to not all family-owned businesses have somebody to leave the business to who wants it. And only 30% of small businesses successfully sell. And yeah, if you're bold, once again, we're a small group, you can come off mute or type in the chat. It's just like hearing those. Are there any concerns that you're coming to, or what's your thoughts around, you know, having an exit plan? And
I mean, I would like to say I have one, but that would be not true. Yeah, it kind of making it up as I go, and just coupling together resources. I have, you know, from when I wasn't a self-employed, retirement stuff that I'm kind of pulling together, and then my own retirement pieces that I'm pulling together, and it's there's not really a plan. It's just kind of, you know, my income fluctuates quite a bit, so it's just kind of, it'll be what it is, and I'll work as long as I have to, which I'm not excited about.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think your experience is, you're not the first person I've heard that from. So, you know, regardless of what age you are, especially in thinking about building a business that is sustainable financially, but also sustainable into the future, you know, having that lens can really, that long vision can really help. And that's one of the things we want to do, especially at CCWB, is like, we're in it to create community wealth. So that's wealth for individuals, it's wealth for people's families, and also wealth for community in a way of allowing people to remain, you know, in place long term and have choices. And so when we look at kind of these statistics, and we're like, how do we make sure these jobs not only stay local and stay in place, but also allow employees to grow through it? And I think employee ownership is such an important tool. I was going to be like, it's the only tool. It is not, but it is a really wonderful tool. I know I'll keep moving, but even if you think of something you want to share, bring into the space, please do. So rise in employee ownership. As we've said, it's like employee ownership can reduce inequality, improve productivity, save jobs, and reward owners and employees. And I think that's a really important part of recognizing that owners and employees have can benefit at the same time. And it's one of those things where it's like, you guys are both working together to fulfill, you know, for mutual benefit. So I'm just going to click through all these. I got a little fancy with this presentation, but so steady increase. We've seen worker co-ops increase, which like by 30% in the US. On one hand, it's a pretty small group of businesses anyways, but like to see growth through the pandemic really speaks to the intense interest in this time and how it can be a solution. We see that, you know, growth within employee ownership, not just more employee-owned businesses, but employee-owned businesses doing better financially. Resilience, I love, we're just getting statistics, you know, from some of the research that's been done. We're not post-pandemic, but it's probably as close as we're going to get right now. And showing that, you know, worker co-ops were not laying people off. In fact, they were able to have these conversations that said, okay, who needs full-time employment for health insurance? Who needs to go part-time to help care for their family? Or, you know, And to have those conversations allowed workforces to stay intact and then rebuild in an intentional way. And we're also just seeing this across sectors. I love that Greg is here. I just have made a list of at least 5 therapy groups that have become worker co-ops in the last few years. So it's really exciting to see. But we see it in food and service, professional services, and so the manufacturing is another one. So I personally, when people are like, who does this work for? I'm like, it works for everyone. It's just finding out what the particular nature of your industry is and then making a plan around that. So now I've kind of made this point to you guys, why employee ownership now. We're going to go into a little more of the specifics of the different types of employee ownership. And I'm just curious, some of you guys mentioned it when you did our intros, but what's your general, actually, did you guys all answer this question? You guys kind of all spoke to it. So, but are you guys familiar with any employee-owned businesses in your community?
I'm originally from Baltimore, which is there's a lot of cooperative businesses. In this area, I'm less familiar. Yeah, and I know of co-ops more from like for me, the interest is more of a like values based and more of like a political place rather than like how logistically this works.
Thank you. Yes, when I think of Baltimore, that is a hotbed for worker co-ops. I think of Red Emma's, if you like a good brunch and a great coffee shop. And let's check out this. Yes, thank you. Bring in some local mujeres. They're a catering company. Let's see here. I was like, what is profit sharing? Okay, great. So we're going to talk about profit sharing next, too, different and same, and what's different about them. Well, thanks, and welcome, Brandon. And yes, Namaste Solar, exactly. So they're embedded, and especially, you know, I'm saying employee-owned. A lot of times they're sneaky. You don't know. You're like, you'll find out, oh, this is 20% employee owned, and there's some that are 100% employee owned, but they're all around us. So it's pretty common. I did just get my solar done by Namaste Solar, so shout out to them. Great company. And let's go. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the employee ownership types. And this is just one slide, so we can kind of dig in and ask questions as we're going, but I want to give you an overview so you kind of see the landscape of where we're going. So the first one are employee stock ownership plans. You might know them as ESOPs. That word gets thrown around, and it's probably the most common type of employee ownership in the United States. And the thing that works really well about them is you can have an ESOP. I just mentioned this on the next slide. It's like you could have an ESOP that is 10% employee owned, that's set aside to 100%. So it's flexible in that way. And it's really at the heart of it, it's a retirement plan. So it's really focused on retention. So the longer you work someplace, the more your shares are valued, the more shares you can accumulate. And then when you leave, you get cashed out, and your shares go back into the employee pool, and you have all of this wealth that you have built. I have heard people, Blue Sky Builder, which is they're in Colorado. They're fairly recent ESOP, and I just heard them speak, and it's like, we've already made millionaires. Like, this is possible through this model. It depends on the business. It has significant tax benefits, but it also is pretty intensive to set up, and there's ongoing cost to maintain it. So this is, while it's the most easily understood, there's a lot of people who can help you do it. Just know there's a big upfront cost. And generally what we say with ESOPs, I can follow up with a comparison table for you guys to look at too. But with ESOPs, we were looking at least 5 million a year in revenue and around 40 plus employees. Those numbers could change. Like, just if you're under that doesn't mean that it's not appropriate for you. It just means you have a unique situation that we kind of have to look into. Yeah. Okay. So look, just reading this question, Bethany, thank you. Yeah. So one of the reasons why there is significant upfront costs and then ongoing maintenance cost is that there was a time back in the 90s when there was an issue with people becoming employee owned and then going bankrupt. And you can imagine that is extremely stressful and puts a huge burden on employees that may have been counting on that retirement. So there are a lot, Congress really got their hands into it, and there's a lot of regulation under ERISA, which I always forget exactly what that stands for. And so generally, we don't see ESOPs. We generally see success stories at this point because people are going in with their eyes wide open, and you have a third-party trustee that is working on behalf to maximize profits for the employees. And kind of layering that employee ownership on top of it, that averages, I think, 8.5% higher profits from an employee ownership. So yes, if you look at like 1 year at a time, you might see losses, but as a whole, when you kind of stand back, you're looking at an upward trajectory. And every year, employees will get, we call it like statement day, and you'll get to see what the stock has been valued at, and then what is in your account personally. So that's one of those ways where, like, even as an employee, year over year, you're seeing if this is a good investment for you. Does that answer your question a little bit? Okay, great. So the next, I want to talk about worker co-ops. Worker co-ops, unlike an ESOP, there's no percentage of ownership besides 100% employee owned and governed. And that doesn't mean that everybody that works there is an owner, and you're going to be like, that doesn't make sense. But how this works is what we call is you're a worker owner. And usually when you start, you have, you're like a provisional member or just a regular W-2 employee. And over the first year or 6 months, depending on what your co-op decides, you're learning about the co-op, the co-op's learning about you, and there's a pathway should you want to become a member. So once you become, that's what we say, it's 100% employee owned of the members, and it operates on a basis of one member, one vote. So this is definitely different than what most Americans think of. Like, it's very easy for us to understand percentage of ownership. You're a majority owner, you're a minority owner, you have 49%, you have 20%. In this case of a worker co-op, what they're saying is all labor is valuable. And so therefore, everybody participates on the same level. Doesn't mean there's not differentials in pay. You could even do some differentials in, a bonus structure. But at the end of the year, the pool of money, the surplus that's left that will go directly to employees, is all done on the same calculation based on hours you work. So if you're a full-time employee, you will get the same payout, what we call patronage, as everyone else. And then we say employee owned and governed. I don't want to scare anyone. It doesn't have to be a collective. Not everybody is making every decision, but the way that a worker co-op functions is that as standard practice, there's a board, and that board is made up of employees. You can have outside advisors on there if you want, depending on what your industry and needs are, but what happens is that the board is democratically elected by the employees. So it's usually a representational governance. And then I would say probably across all these spectrums, we're just going to see generally a management practice that's more participatory. So a way that people feel like their voice is being heard, even if it's not a standardized vote, if you will. And great thing about a worker co-op is it's really any size, any industry. It works in the US, we see them on the smaller side. Globally, we have ones that are 80,000 worker owners. So that's a great thing. There's also a lower setup cost. And because of the way the board functions, there's still accountability, even though there's not a third-party trustee. But everybody's invested. If you're an owner and you're benefiting year over year, you're going to be working in the best interest on behalf of that business. Any questions there before I go on to the next type? So the other 3 is employee ownership trusts, or you might hear EOTs. This is very new in the US. I can tell you we are completing our first one in Colorado this year, early this year. It's big in the UK. I've had a lot of conversations with people who are working in the UK. They're really excited about the potential of it and don't understand why it's not bigger in the US. A couple years ago, in the news, EOTs got a big, kind of a big boost. It's similar but different, but when the headlines were like, Patagonia sells to the environment, Patagonia used a trust to do that. And so who they named the beneficiary was the environment. In this situation, the beneficiary would be placed as the employees. And it works very similarly to an ESOP, except that it doesn't have to have it's not regulated. So I think to me, this is a hybrid of, even though it functions differently, of an ESOP and a co-op. So there is ways that accountability is built into it, and it is meant to be easier to access and maintain. At the heart of it, this is around preserving a business. A trust can exist for 100 years. And so this is for businesses that are very, I think, values-based and plan to continue functioning on and on and on and not be sold. And then the last, which this is something where you're like, yes, I'm interested in this. I'm like, let's get on the phone, because there isn't one way this works. So alternative equity structures, yeah, you might also hear AESs, are really just a hodgepodge. This means like a lot of people are doing employee ownership and don't know it. And you might be doing this in other states and it's not considered employee ownership, but in Colorado it is. This is something new that they named in their legislation as that they included. And so it could look like, stock, that could be like synthetic or phantom, profit sharing of any sort, not just like a bonus, because it has to be kind of codified of like what the structure of ownership is. So there's a lot of ways that looks. It's variable cost, but I would still say definitely compared to an ESOP, it's lower cost. And it would just depend on how complex. So to me, this is like, you've got a vision, you've got an idea of how to work, and you want to be creative, and you've got a lawyer who's like, yep, let's do that, And this could also just be like a partnership based, like LLC partnership that's at least 3 people. So that's emerging. To me, it's a really great way to just start doing it no matter where you are. But I also think on the spectrum of employee ownership, the other 3 are probably more of like a structure that will get you there pretty easily as well. Questions about these? So we can come back to these as you're feeling. I'm going to follow up with a comparison table for you guys to look over these and see what the different, a little bit more detail. I'm highlighting worker co-ops because this is where I will also want to tell you, I'm here to share all types of employee ownership with you, but my specialty is worker co-ops. And when I get into kind of the packages that we sell, I'll let you sell. The packages that we offer, I'm going to kind of show you where I would drop off in the process, depending on where, what direction you're going to go. And by me dropping off, it doesn't mean I would leave you high and dry. It just means I would give you the best referral list and make sure you've connected with somebody that you feel like you can work with and is going to get you there. That's really an expert. All right. So, when people are financially invested, they want a return. When people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute. I love employee ownership because it's both here, and I think that I got into this work originally for the background in organizational development. And where I came to was just like, this gives you a structure. I wanted to understand, let me just step back. I wanted to understand how we spend so much time at work. How could we make work better? I don't see work going away anytime soon. And it's something we're all, have a lot to contribute to the world and to our jobs and life. But how can we make it better? That's what I came to. And employee ownership has given me that structure where it's both. You can have that financial reward and wealth building, while also creating a space like you want to contribute, where your labor is going. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the benefits are. So what we said is legacy preservation, absolutely. Financial security, this is both ways. This is for employees who buy in, and this is also for the exiting owner, right? Productivity and innovation, talked about that as being something that we see correlated with employee ownership. And in this transition, also gradual transition. So Greg doesn't have his exit plan yet. He's young, building a business. But at some point, you might say, wow, I put so much energy into this. And I also am ready to maybe start stepping back a little bit. So you could have a plan where you're part of the business for the next 10 years. But you're also sharing that, sharing what you know and building leadership of others to take your spot. Community ties. I could say a lot about this, and definitely the data is there. I could even just say my experience with Namaste Solar is you feel like you are part of a community there, and it is a household name. If you say solar, people in Colorado usually say Namaste. And that's really important to them. It's not just about the profit, but it's also about, and they very much give back to the community in many ways. And most co-ops, we can talk about it, have some sort of way that they are showing up for community. It's one of the principles, concern for community. So it's how are you interacting beyond your business? Economic resilience. There is a lot of strength when we're all pulling together. even through hard times, more likely to succeed. And also that, investment that that you're benefiting from this, right? Financially, you're going to be in it to see the business succeed. Employer reward and growth. Employee-owned businesses, there's a lot more places for participation. You don't have to take advantage of them if that's like, no, I'm good with just my, coming to work, doing a good job, going home. But oftentimes we'll see more committees, more ways for people to get involved in a decision-making level and really impact the company in the direction it's going. And peace of mind. And once again, I think this is reciprocal. I can put on my business owner hat, exiting a business I've built. What's going to happen to it? Will it remain? If I sell it, what will the new owners do? And when employees do that too, it's like they hear the business could sell or the owner is going to retire, that adds a lot of stress. So knowing that there's going to be continuity in the way the business is run really is an amazing peace of mind. Thanks, Bethany. There isn't necessarily, mostly because I think we're just seeing such a huge leap in transitions, and also, for the last 20 years, we've been seeing the silver tsunami is hitting, which people who are not familiar with the silver tsunami is just referring to baby boomers who are the majority owners of businesses, small businesses in the US, are going to retire. The pandemic kind of had like two things, is like both an accelerator of this, but also some people held on. So business owners who were getting close to retirement was like, I cannot imagine leaving my business now in these unknown times where finances are tight. And then on the other side, what I've been talking to business owners is like, I held on, but that really burned me out. Like that was the last I had and now I'm ready to go. So for employee ownership, I think always, best case scenario, whenever we can, is it's planful, where you make a plan around it, it's known, it's communicated, and that just eases the transition. But there's no wrong or right way to do it. Sometimes we know there's just urgency around something or a change has to happen. So thank you for the question. All right, I'm gonna click through these two. Too fancy. Benefits by numbers. So on the business side, right, 46% longer job tenure, which is huge. I mean, I think it's like the numbers, I've seen a huge range, but let's say like on average, it's $10,000 to bring on a new employee. So, the more you're churning through employees, that definitely affects your bottom line. And also then you just don't have as many, skilled and knowledgeable employees, right? You're constantly onboarding. Thank you, David. Bethany, please see David's comment too. Succession planning should be in place from day one. People get hit by buses. So true. Not in a morbid way, but yes, could be real bus, metaphorical bus. Another thing is 8.5 higher profits. These statistics are across all forms of employee ownership, not just co-ops. So this number is insane. I've actually checked it like a million different times. Like every time I give this presentation, I'm like, is it really 92% higher household net worth? And it is. And to me, that speaks for not only the job and the security that's coming in, but I also think the intangible benefits of employee ownership is we see people feeling more valued, for their contribution and given more dignity at work and also more agency. And that just overflows into personal lives, into like your belief in your partner and your partner's belief in them. And, and it's just like, and what your family can do. And so I think that speaks to that overflow of benefits. 33% higher medium income. And then this wide range of 9 to 19% higher productivity levels. I'm guessing that's just like, it's not always easy to measure productivity. But lots of benefits to the business and the employees. So I've got a really short video for you guys that I'd like to share. Just as an example, this is a worker co-op conversion. It does a really good job of setting it up, so I'm not even going to cue it up other than it's about 3.5 minutes. And really speaks to, hopefully it will work. There we go. Let me know if you cannot hear this, okay?
The thought of taking away their job and the work culture that they love so that I could go do something different just seemed like the worst thing to do to a group of people that trusted you to work for a small business. In the beginning, we kind of knew we wanted it to be a company-owned business. We just weren't sure how it was going to work. But in the last couple years, we really have decided that we wanted to move back home and to sell the business.
The idea of selling to somebody outside of Happy Earth would be a mistake. We built this company into a business where people get treated well. We felt like anyone we sold to would potentially obliterate the culture that we've developed.
I was very worried about Happy Earth getting sold to an outside party, not because I thought there was a huge chance of it happening, but just because I knew if it did happen, it would be kind of the end of everything. There was no way that the company getting sold to a third party would have ended with it being anything remotely the same kind of company as it had been before.
We had started talking to some of the employees about being a co-op, but every time they would ask us questions, we had no idea what it meant.
We are going with an employee-owned cooperative. We chose it because after looking at all of our options, it seemed like the best possible option for us and just the best fit for the way that we were running the business already.
We chose to go with that because it gave more people a voice. So more people could be a part of it and be an owner in it and have that ownership, which gives them a different feeling about being at work. We've had other companies come to us, seeing if we wanted to buy their cleaning companies. And I wish we would have had this information to give them because a lot of their employees just lost their jobs. And those employees could have banded together and become their own thing.
The responses from the team have been positive from the folks that are part of the conversion team.
Anyone else who is considering forming a co-op or buying in as a worker owner, I think it's an amazing idea. You do not get the opportunity to get the kind of equity and fairness that you get this way with most other companies, most other structures. So I think it's just such a rare opportunity. I feel like if it's something you can do, you absolutely should.
I think the idea that you could sell your business and actually make some money off of it is the biggest benefit, but also leaving your business in the hands of people who actually like the work and not just looking to make the biggest profit off it.
Project Equity and Nexus made the entire thing possible, teaching us what we didn't know that we needed to know because none of us knew anything about how to make this transition.
Project Equity and Nexus have helped us with our exit strategy by helping us determine if the co-op was a feasible option and something that we could actually do. But more than that, they really helped our team see that they could do the employee ownership portion of this, which opens up the door for us to go out to the next part of our life.
I'm no longer hesitant or feel like I'm setting them up to fail. Like I feel like I've given them all the tools I can possibly give them to be successful. But to see the confidence over the past 6 months with our employees on this team, seeing their confidence in their everyday life and how they interact with one another and how they're talking to each other, it has been amazing to watch. So that's the part I like the most.
I love that video. I'm like, it just hits all the spots. And I do think this is, possible for any form of employee ownership, for sure. I'll also just mention, this is not a local Colorado one. We just got a communications director, so look for some really well done videos highlight Colorado, but their production value, I think, top notch for this one. So I like to share it because it does kind of give you all the feels. Let's see if I can, there we go. Before we just like keep blowing through this, any comments on that video or things that are coming up for you? All right, you guys, your silence is telling me I'm nailing this and I'm making a good case. No questions, very clear. As they come up, still use that chat, come off mute. So as we kind of go towards this next section is going to be like, so how are we going to make this easy for you? What's the pathway? I'll click through this too. So usually when I talk to business owners, some form, maybe all three, or maybe it's one, come up for concerns, which is like loss of control. I have to break the news to all of you guys. I'm seeing this as such a big trend where it's like business owners sharing profits, no big deal. They're like, yep, that sounds cool. You're like, but that means you're going to not have all the same decision-making power. They're like, like, and it just takes like really a moment to grapple with that. And that's real. I mean, we are creatures of habit, and, knowing how things operate and how it has operated, thinking about it changing is something we have to grapple with for sure and make a plan for. Complexity and cost. This is a barrier of people who are like, I'm interested in this, but I'm just like, I wouldn't even know where to start. This seems really like complicated. What is it even going to cost me? Luckily, I can tell you that. I can answer that question today. And then employee readiness. And this is something, every business we've got to look at, and that's one of the measures of feasibility. Is this a good fit culturally in the culture that's already been created? And on the talent on hand, who already knows how to do these roles? Would they be ready for this? Is this something employees are going to say yes to? So I will talk about how we address that concern. All right, so considerations in this transition step. So education, really that discernment discovery process. What type of employee ownership is right for me? Getting educated around that, and then educating a steering committee or a transition committee. We're gonna make sure your business get a third-party appraisal so both parties can feel good about and confident in the price. Financing, I won't lie, it's not like you're just going to go to your average bank and say, hey, I'm ready to finance this deal. But we've worked with a lot of lenders and have a pretty good list of people who are familiar with employee ownership and are really like on a mission to create more. So we're going to find some values aligned financing for you, create the entity, and really look at the change management, the transition management. How is that going to work? Governance and structure, we will walk through those steps and make sure the way that it's going to be governed, if it's a co-op especially, is clear, and how to set that up and maintain it. We'll look at membership criteria. So in a worker co-op, what is that provisional period before somebody's eligible to become a worker owner? These are all things that would go into your onboarding plan as well, as you really want these to be clear and known to current employees and future, because these structures can help with retention and recruitment. You want to definitely leverage the employee ownership in all of those steps. And then operational adjustments. So that is, how are you going to maintain it year over year? What roles and staffing do they need to change? Is it upskilling? What needs to happen when the business owner transitions? So we look at all of these parts and walk you through it. I'm gonna skip this part, actually. So some of the financial considerations are, what's the cost gonna be of the transition? Right now, there's a lot of incentives, and we'll get to the nitty gritty at the very end, but there's both scholarship packages that would pay for a co-op developer, such as my time, to go through, and those scholarships are 50 to 100%, so it makes it very affordable. And then we get to layer in Colorado with a tax credit that will pay reimburse for half of everything you spend in the transaction. So that would be legal fees, accountants, consultants. They've really put a large amount of things that qualify under that umbrella, with the idea of like, we want to help businesses be able to really do this. And as of this year is a huge deal. We were able to move the legislation from a tax credit of 1 year for the year that you convert to now it's 7 years. So just acknowledging that like the transition is one moment in your business's journey, but what do you do afterwards to leverage that stewardship culture or ownership culture? The sales price, we have David on this call who knows, he mentioned that he did owner financing. For when we think about this work, a lot of times from my perspective, it's like a debt capacity. I am in it to make sure that business owners are compensated fairly, but that employees are investing in something that is going to be sustainable. And so finding that sales price, right? And this is not a model where you are going to maximize the sales price for the owner. This is a model where the owner is going to find a place that is comfortable for them, that they are getting rewarded for all of the effort and time and building that business, but employees can actually afford to pay for it. So there's a little like art and science to that. And like I mentioned, we do a third-party evaluation. So there's kind of a baseline of where we're starting from. And then securing capital. That's a huge part of what we'll be, helping you through and really making those connections as we go. All right, I'm gonna click through these two. Okay, so here's the financial support, the details. So OEDIT scholarships that I mentioned, this is the Office of Economic Development and International Trade on the state level. They have an Office of Employee Ownership, which is a fabulous resource here. I will also follow up with those links, and thank you. I can see something within the chat. I bet it's how. That's the link to it. Lots of goodies there. But so we are one service provider. CCWB helps all Front Range metro urban areas. We have another organization, the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Center, that supports rural businesses. So if you know anybody or you want to be connected to them, I will make that direct connection to you. Marion would be your contact, and they're offering very similar scholarship packages. Let's see here, and the 50 to 100% coverage of scholarship is based on your business's revenue. I'm personally really proud of this because it's something we not only negotiated, but really pushed the state on. The state has never offered a range based on revenue, but these are kind of the last of ARPA, so last of COVID funds. And we were like, if we really want to be able to help businesses that have been affected by the last 5 years, 6 years, I don't even know. Like we need that flexibility, and in practice, it's been really incredible the amount of the different range of businesses we've been able to support. Those scholarships are good through October 2026. So we've got 2 years. From then on, we will still continue to do this work. We just won't have this particular pot of money. state of Colorado tax credit, I mentioned this to you, it just got expanded this year. So it's, the employee ownership tax credit to, is it something and expand? And for co-ops, it's up to 40,000. For ESOPs, it's up to 150,000. And that difference in price is the difference in what it costs to set something up. So it's definitely reflective of that. And then I'm totally blanking what the cap is for alternative equity structures. I believe it's 25,000. So that also, those are all just helping to reflect the costs that are kind of embedded in the conversion. And then there's capital gains tax deferral to avoid immediate tax liabilities. I will talk in more detail with you. It's kind of unique. We'll work with an accountant. Probably, if you don't have a CPA, we will find one for you and have those conversations with you. And so if you're like, yeah, but what is this cost? I don't even know, like, what's the full range? So with CCWB scholarships, you will pay somewhere from 0 to 9,000 max for support from a co-op developer. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. For legal and accounting valuation, we're saying probably around 6,000. Like I said, I'm working with all different types of businesses. So there's some industries where valuation becomes really important. There's other industries and sizes that we're like, let's get to a pretty good number. So I've got a partnership with an SBDC that can bring that number down as well. And then cost after tax credit is usually that $3,000 to $8,000 range. So that's what you're looking at for the whole transition. And like I said, Colorado wants you to do this. CCWB wants you to do this and have it be easy for you. So don't let any of these numbers scare you. It's like, let's get on the phone and make a plan for where you are and what's going to work for you. Any questions? Oh yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, it would be like there's a series of small businesses. I mean, would it make sense to just like start over from scratch under a new one, or like pick one to go under? Like how would that work?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to say you're probably a good candidate for a worker co-op that you're asking that question. And there's two ways that you could do it. If you did convert to a worker co-op, you would be changing entities anyways. So in Colorado, we had the Limited Cooperative Association, or an LCA, which is usually my go-to, not knowing your particular situation. It's a great entity. And so in that case, you could switch to a new entity. The other way you could do it, and this is getting into the weeds, is like if you wanted to all keep your LLCs, you could do like what we call like a shared services co-op, which is more like the members are businesses instead of individuals. And that's an option. What I think probably in your industry, the biggest considerations are going to be how does that interact with insurance and any regulation that the state has.
Yes. Okay.
So our packages, and Hal, if you could put the CCWB website in the chat for you guys, we have 4 packages that we offer. And it's both in a situation where you're starting from scratch, it's a stack them all. In a situation where you've done some work, it might be a pick your own adventure. But what it looks like is coaching. So it's 4 sessions of coaching. And in that, we just are talking about what concerns do you have? What are the details of your business, and what form of employee ownership would be right? My goal in that is to really support you in building your commitment to the transaction, I don't take these things lightly. You know, it's like when you start saying to employees, "Oh, I'm gonna sell to you," you know, it could go a few different ways. But if you change your mind and people are really excited about it, that can cause issues as well. So, what my hope is through the coaching is like it's a safe space to really figure out, is this right for you? Then what type is right for you? And what's the roadmap to the next steps? Then it goes into feasibility assessment. And that is really like, is this feasible on a legal level, a financial level, and a cultural level? And so we work with you besides, you know, that's even surveying the employees to see, you know, are people interested in starting to have those conversations? To me, so those first two steps, any form of employee ownership, I want to give you the spectrum. We're going to go through discovery process together. You're going to come up with what's right. Then the third package, which is kind of the full conversion support, is more project management and hand-holding week to week to get through the transaction, and you know, the operation consideration, the governance, the transaction and financing. That I'm only going to go on that ride with you if you're a worker co-op. It's not because I don't, and maybe if you're an alternative equity structure, we can talk about that. I think there's a lot of similarities in some ways. But if you're an ESOP, I'm definitely going to refer you because I want to make sure you have the best help in it. And it is just much more legal and compliance based. And then the fourth is, it's almost like a pre-sale. So on the state level, once you've legally converted, your conversion is done. To me, I'm like, oh, we're just starting, you know, it's like, how do we make sure that this really takes root, both from an operational and kind of like workflow, as well as from a cultural standpoint. So in that section, you're going to have access to some on-demand learning around like governance and decision-making. And then I'm going to be helping either the transition team or your HR team, wherever it makes sense, to make sure this is embedded in your onboarding program. You know, this is, you have an education calendar, because there is a lot of education that goes into this moment. So just want to make sure you guys have a plan going into the next year. Truth be told, I'm going to be hanging around. So as you need, this also gives us that moment, you know, to like call me up when you need help, burning questions, those kinds of things. All right. You know what? If you, yeah. So any questions about what we've covered so far? Just give me some prompts for you. I think I've got just like a couple more slides for you. So this is how it looks. I described our packages, but I'll just say it in another way. You'll find this on our website as well. So this is how I think about it. I've seen businesses convert in as like as fast as 6 months. I would say the average is at 12 months. And then I've seen outliers who are like, you know what, we're seasonal. I only can work on this 3 months out of the year. They're like creeping on 2 years. So it can be a process. It really has to do, I think, with what your capacity is to engage in this and the urgency you feel. And as I said, it can be phased. So the engagement could be longer just because you had planned for it to be so, you know. But so you'll explore your options, figure out what's right for you, assess feasibility. You'll create your plan, we'll execute it together. And we'll celebrate when it's completed. I definitely will not skip that step. And then you'll start investing in that culture. You know, how are you gonna, what kind of culture do you want to maintain? What kind of culture do you want to build? And be really intentional about cultivating a stewardship culture. And that can often look like such tools as like open book management. You know, it's hard to know how to positively affect the revenue of the business if you're not sure what the 3 things in your department you're measuring. So that's one tool that could look like. There are many. We should probably have another session with David to talk about what those can look like. Yeah, David, we should have that. Okay, just so you know, this is a team approach. I love cooperatives, so I feel like together we're stronger. So in this journey, you're going to have a co-op developer. That could be me. If you're in a rural area, that could be Marion at the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Center. External experts and peers. I think definitely the Colorado State Office of Employee Ownership through OEDIT will be a huge partner and cheerleader for you. If you know, I say co-ops here specifically, but any form of employee ownership, there's no better thing than to have a conversation with somebody who's been through it. You know, so connecting you to other business owners who have gone through this, case studies. There's a really supportive community overall. Want to make sure you guys tap into that and have that resource. And then various different service providers, which is going to be your lawyer. By the way, Colorado has the national leader on employee ownership law, Jason Weiner. He's just one in our referral, so we're going to make sure you find somebody who is the right fit for you and you're excited to work with. That's going to be, you know, a CPA, you know, valuation, financing, so all of those. And we're going to kind of hold your hand through it. So we know that you're starting with people you already have that you like, and we know, oh, another one. And sometimes they'll need a little bit of education too. We can do that. And then employee representatives are what we would call the transition committee. So whoever that is to help kind of shepherd this along. All right, here we go. All right, I'm a big fan of Grace Lee Boggs, so I'll leave you this quote. I'll just say, so many institutions in our society need reinventing. The time has come for a new dream. And I think that employee ownership offers that new dream to us, this idea of shared prosperity, of wealth creation for people who have traditionally been shut out of the economy, and to really see each other as like just full contributors, regardless of the position we have. Okay, this is it. Okay, we're like 1 minute over. The best way that I can help you in your individual experience is to just get on the phone with me. So Hal has my calendar link in the chat. You can scan this. I love to talk to you. We can do it in 30 minutes. We can do it in an hour, whatever you need. And like I said, I would probably do a call with you and then move you into that coaching package just so you'd have more access to meet you where you are. And yeah, I give this out freely. I hope that you will use it. I think everybody has unique details of your business. So that's the next step in the journey. And thank you guys. That's all I've got. I know we're at time, but I have a little extra time if you want to stay and let me stop sharing. If you have individual questions and you want to chat, if not, I can follow up by email. And thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you.
Good job.
Ah.
I always think, oh shoot, you know who I have a call with next? Jonathan from Bonbon.